My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a senior fraud investigator for a major financial institution. My job is to spot the tells, the tiny inconsistencies that unravel a lie, especially when it comes to legal documents. I've seen it all: elaborate schemes, desperate attempts, and shocking betrayals. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the moment I found my own name, crudely but effectively forged, on a power of attorney document, tucked away in my mother's old mahogany desk. It wasn't just any POA, it was one granting my parents full authority over my financial and medical decisions. The date on it was 6 months prior, just after I'd bought my first house. My breath caught in my throat, not from anger yet, but from a cold, professional recognition of the crime. This wasn't some stranger trying to fleece a vulnerable elder, this was my family, turning their skills against me. They thought they were clever, but they forgot one crucial detail: I built my career on finding exactly this kind of deception, and I was about to turn those skills on them. To understand why this felt like a punch to the gut, you need to know about my parents, Evelyn and Richard Hayes. They weren't inherently malicious people, but they were perpetually, almost pathologically, bad with money. My entire childhood was a series of financial tightropes, late mortgage payments, maxed-up credit cards, and the constant, low hum of anxiety in the house. My father, Richard, was a kind but ineffectual man, easily swayed by my mother's grand ideas and even grander spending habits. Evelyn, on the other hand, was a force of nature, charming, persuasive, and utterly convinced that the rules didn't quite apply to her. She believed in manifesting wealth, which usually meant spending money she didn't have and then expecting someone else to bail her out. I learned early on to be fiercely independent, to save every penny, and to guard my financial information like it was gold. That's partly why I gravitated towards fraud investigation. I wanted to understand how people exploited trust and how to prevent it. My relationship with them had always been strained by their financial instability. They'd often hint at needing help, or ask for loans that were never repaid. When I started working, they saw my salary not as my hard-earned income, but as a potential safety net for their next crisis. I'd set firm boundaries after college, explaining that while I loved them, I wouldn't be their personal bank. This led to periods of cold silence, followed by renewed attempts to draw me into their drama. The purchase of my first house, a small bungalow I'd saved meticulously for, had been a point of particular tension. They'd wanted to help with the down payment, which I knew meant co-signing a loan they couldn't afford or trying to leverage my good credit. I politely but firmly refused, insisting on doing it entirely on my own. Their smiles had been brittle that day at the closing, a detail that now, looking at the forged document, seemed darkly significant. The POA itself was a standard form, downloaded from an online legal service. My name, Clara Hayes, was typed in as the principal, granting my parents, Evelyn and Richard Hayes, as agents, the power to manage my finances, make medical decisions, and even sell property on my behalf. The signature, supposedly mine, was a clumsy approximation. It was close enough to pass a cursory glance, especially if someone wasn't looking for forgery, but to me, it screamed fake. I knew my own signature better than anyone, and the way the pen pressure wavered, the slight hesitation in the capital C, these were the tells I looked for every day in my work. My mother had clearly tried to replicate it, but she lacked the natural flow of my hand. The notary stamp looked legitimate, which was concerning. Either it was a truly dedicated forgery, or my mother had found a complacent, perhaps negligent, notary. I picked up the document, my fingers tracing the false signature. My first thought was not of anger, but of the cold, clinical question: why? What were they trying to do? I placed the POA carefully back in the desk drawer, making sure everything looked undisturbed. I needed more information before I confronted them. Over the next few days, I started my own investigation, treating my parents as I would any other potential fraudster. I checked my bank accounts, credit reports, and investment statements. Everything appeared normal. No unusual withdrawals, no new loans. This was a relief, but it also deepened the mystery. Why forge such a powerful document if they weren't actively using it? Then, the first concrete demand came. My mother called, her voice bright and overly casual. Clara, darling, your father's health has been a bit of a concern lately. Nothing serious, just his blood pressure. We're thinking of having him see Dr. Evans, you know, the specialist downtown. But they're so particular about paperwork. Would you mind just signing a few things for us? Just a release form, really, so they can talk to me directly. My heart hammered. Dr. Evans was a top cardiologist, expensive and highly sought after. My father had a primary care physician, but never a specialist of that caliber unless there was a serious issue. And the release form sounded suspiciously like a medical POA. I remembered the document in the drawer, the one granting them medical decision-making power. Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice even, I'm happy to help Dad with his appointments, but I'm not comfortable signing anything without reading it thoroughly, and frankly, I'm not sure why you'd need my signature for his care. She bristled. Oh, you always make things so difficult, Clara. It's just a formality. Never mind, I'll figure something out. The call ended abruptly. That was when the numbers stopped looking accidental. My mother's unusual persistence about my father's medical care, coupled with the forged POA, set off every alarm bell. I knew she was a master manipulator, but this felt different. It felt desperate. I decided to make a discreet inquiry. I called my father's primary care doctor, Dr. Miller, under the guise of checking on a routine prescription refill for him. During the conversation, I casually asked if there had been any recent requests for his medical records from a specialist. Dr. Miller paused. Actually, yes, Ms. Hayes. We received a request for his full medical file from Dr. Evans' office last week. It was accompanied by a power of attorney document, signed by you, authorizing your parents to act on your father's behalf. My blood ran cold. Dr. Miller, I said, my voice barely a whisper, I have never signed such a document. My parents forged power of attorney. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Dr. Miller, a kind man who had known our family for years, sounded genuinely shocked. Ms. Hayes, that's a very serious accusation. The document appeared to be in order, with a notary seal. I explained my profession and the telltale signs of forgery I'd observed. I asked him to put a hold on releasing any further records and to flag the POA as potentially fraudulent. He agreed, sounding deeply troubled. This wasn't about my money, not yet. This was about my father's health, and my mother attempting to gain control over his medical decisions, possibly to access funds or resources tied to his care, or even to make decisions I would never approve of. The fact that they had used my name on a forged document to do it was a calculated move, likely thinking I wouldn't question it, or that I would be implicated if I did. I knew I couldn't let this stand. The implications were immense, not just for my father, but for me. A fraudulent POA in my name could open me up to liability, damage my professional reputation, and compromise my own financial security. My parents had crossed a line that, as a fraud investigator, I simply could not ignore. I spent the next few days meticulously gathering my evidence. I took a high-resolution photograph of the forged POA from my mother's desk, careful not to touch the original. I pulled up samples of my own signature from old contracts and official documents, creating a clear comparison. I drafted a timeline of events, noting my mother's phone call, Dr. Miller's confirmation, and the date on the forged document. I even contacted the notary whose stamp was on the document, discreetly inquiring about their procedures. The notary, a young woman named Brenda, remembered my mother. She said Evelyn had brought in a pre-signed document, claiming her daughter was too busy at work to come in person, and had assured Brenda that the signature was authentic. Brenda, unfortunately, had taken her word for it, a common but negligent practice. This was a crucial piece of information. I called my parents and asked them to meet me at my house for an urgent family discussion. My mother, sensing my serious tone, tried to deflect, but I insisted. It's about Dad's health, and something important I found, I said, knowing that would get her attention. They arrived looking apprehensive. My father sat on the edge of the sofa, nervously adjusting his tie, while my mother perched opposite me, her usual bravado slightly dimmed. Clara, what's this all about? She asked, her voice tight. I didn't beat around the bush. I placed a folder on the coffee table between us. Inside were the comparison photos of my true signature and the forgery, the timeline, and a printout of the POA. "Mom, Dad," I began, my voice steady, "I found this in your desk, Mom. A power of attorney document, supposedly signed by me, granting you full authority over my finances and medical decisions. And another one, in my name, for Dad's medical care. Except I didn't sign either of them. You forged my signature." My mother's face went white. My father gasped, looking from the document to my mother, then T. "Oh me. Evelyn, what is she talking about?" he stammered. My mother, recovering quickly, launched into a furious defense. "Clara, how dare you accuse us? We were just trying to help. Your father's health is declining, and you're never around. We needed to be able to make decisions for him, and you always make things so difficult about money. It was for your own good, and his." She tried to grab the folder, but I pulled it back. "It wasn't for my good, Mom. It was illegal. And you used my name to try and gain control over Dad's medical care without his full consent, and without mine. I work in fraud, Mom. I know exactly what this is." "It's not fraud if it's family," she shrieked, her composure cracking. "We're your parents. We have a right to know what's going on. To protect you." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You don't have a right to forge my signature or to impersonate me. This isn't protection, it's manipulation and a serious crime." I looked directly at my father. "Dad, did you know about this?" He looked down at his hands, studying the carpet. "Evelyn said, she said it was just a formality. That you'd agreed in principle." His voice was barely audible. "She said it was the only way to get Dr. Evans to see me without all the red tape." The silence that followed was heavy with years of unspoken resentments and betrayals. I knew then that this wasn't just about the POA, it was about their fundamental inability to respect boundaries, their entitlement, and their willingness to exploit anyone, even their own daughter, for their perceived needs. I pulled out another document from the folder. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. She's prepared a formal letter to invalidate this POA, and to put a legal block on any institution recognizing it. I've also informed Dr. Miller's office, and they've flagged your requests for Dad's records as fraudulent. If you attempt to use these forged documents again, or any others, I will press charges. I don't want to do that, but I will protect myself and my father." My mother stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and dawning fear. The charming facade had completely crumbled, replaced by a raw, desperate anger. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. "We're your parents." "I hunt fraud for a living, Mom," I said, my voice unwavering. "This is what I do. And I can't look the other way just because it's family." I pushed the formal letter and a pen across the table. "You can sign this, acknowledging the invalidation, and agree to cease and desist from any further attempts to use these documents, or I will proceed with legal action immediately." My father, looking utterly defeated, reached for the pen first. He signed his name slowly, his hand trembling. My mother hesitated, her gaze darting between me and the document. Finally, with a frustrated sigh, she snatched the pen and scrawled her signature. The confrontation shattered whatever illusion of a normal family we had left. The forged power of attorney was officially invalidated, and I sent copies of the revocation to all relevant financial and medical institutions. I also informed the notary, Brenda, who was mortified and promised to be more diligent in the future. My parents lost access to any information or decisions related to my life, and my father's medical care was put under my direct oversight, with his consent. He eventually saw Dr. Evans, but I accompanied him to every appointment, ensuring his best interests were genuinely served. My mother never truly apologized. She tried to frame it as a misunderstanding, a well-intentioned mistake, but I knew better. The trust, once so fragile, was now irrevocably broken. I changed all my passwords, reviewed my estate planning, and put additional security measures on my accounts. It felt extreme, but necessary. My job taught me that once a boundary is crossed, it often happens again if there are no consequences. The mahogany desk where I found the forged POA still sits in their living room, a silent monument to their betrayal. But now, when I visit, I notice a small, framed photo of my father and me on its surface, a real signature of a moment, not a forged one. I haven't forgiven them, not fully, but I have protected myself. And that, I realized, was the most important thing I could do.